Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for your patience. So I'd like to proceed to our third session. I'm sorry, our fourth session, first session after lunch. This is our session with NAMI NYC, also known as the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We have the great pleasure of introducing Clara Chielli, the outreach coordinator for NAMI NYC operations, and our two speakers, Zach Sandler and Marla Schultz. So thank you so much, and I will hand over the floor to you three.
Thanks so much, and thanks so much for having us. So as Tammy said, my name is Clara. I'm the interim voice and outreach coordinator at NAMI NYC. I'm going to do a really super quick introduction to NAMI NYC and what we do, and then pass it over to Zach and Marla. So NAMI NYC is the National Alliance on Mental Illness of New York City. We're a grassroots mental health organization based in Manhattan, but we're running remotely right now. Our office is closed, and so we're welcoming folks from all over the US and all over the world to our support groups and classes and other events, which is pretty cool. So our mission is to provide support, education, and advocacy to all individuals and families impacted by mental illness. What that means in practice is that we have support groups and classes and other services free of charge that are offered both to people dealing with their own mental health issues, whatever those may be, and to family members and friends. We know that supporting somebody that's struggling or having a hard time, whatever it is they may be dealing with, can be really stressful. And we want to make sure that those people are able to take care of themselves so that we can all better support the people in our lives. The last thing that I want to mention is that all of our programs are peer-led. So our support group for people living with anxiety and depression is facilitated by people living with anxiety and depression who also go through a training and other support to be able to facilitate that group. Our support group for parents of children and adolescents is facilitated by parents. So all of our groups and classes and other programs try to really have that peer-led, peer support model. So that's kind of what we do in a nutshell. You can find out more by visiting our website, naminyc.org, and I'm going to put that in the chat as well, or by calling our helpline, and I'm going to put that phone number in the chat as well so folks can reference it. So that's it. I'm going to turn it over to Zach.
Thank you, Clara. Hello, everyone. I am Zach. I am a mental health advocate with a musical twist. And that partly means I wrote a musical about my own mental condition inside my head, which you'll see portions of today a cappella. See more about me. I am very proud to have been to all 48 lower US states. I live in DC now, and at the moment I am in Dewey Beach, Delaware, and it is lovely here. So, Marla, on to you.
Marla, you're muted.
That's good because I can start over. Hi, everybody. First of all, I think it's awesome that you're pursuing a career in psychiatry and mental health. So wouldn't be here without you guys. Just want to let you know. I'm a stand-up comic. I'm a writer. I'm also an advocate for pancreatic cancer, PanCan. I live on the Upper East Side. I've traveled the world. I have a great life. I got an emotional support dog, the cutest dog in the world, and I'm happy to be here. Zach?
So just to let folks know that there's going to be a couple of opportunities to ask questions throughout the presentation. So Zach and Marla are going to talk about what happened, and then we're going to pause for questions, and then we're going to go on to what helps, and then pause for questions. Just so when we have our first break, just so everyone knows that it's not the only chance you'll have to ask questions.
Yes, thanks, Clara. So there's a lot of people behind it. So when I got to college, I had not had any sort of mental health symptoms, conditions, nothing out of the ordinary as far as I knew. And then things changed, and I'm going to describe that to you a little bit of the show here. Junior year of college, I'm elected pitch pipe of my a cappella group. Now, for those of you who haven't seen Pitch Perfect, that means music director. At Yale, a cappella is so intense that not only is it more of a social center than frats and sororities, but that you can't, if you're a leader of the group, you cannot do any other extracurricular activities. And some say you can't even go to class. So for a year, I have to give up my biggest passion, which is musical theater. But I'm stubborn, so I auditioned for the main stage musical anyway. And immediately I call them back and say, I'm sorry, I wasted your time, I can't do the show. But then a few days later, having not even gone to callback, I get a call from the music director offering me a lead role in the show. That's unheard of. I didn't even go to callbacks. The universe is trying to tell me something. So I meet with my business manager and I tell him about the opportunity. And he says, that's great, Zach. Really great. But if you take the role, you're going to have to step down as pitch pipe. So I turned down the show. About a week later, I start to feel heavy, hopeless. And despite being surrounded by friends, alone. It's as though my brain has sunk through the floorboards of its house and landed with a thud in the basement. And then I hear a voice. It's not exactly like a literal voice in my head, but it's like a person up there. And he says to me, just give up. No one likes you. You're alone. Who are you? I'm Doug. Ooh, so alone. This goes on for about a week. He never shows his face. And then, like a light switch, something inside my head flips on. It's another voice. He says to me, come fly with me. Come see the view you can see from up high. Come fly. And his name is Charlie. And I like him a lot better than Doug. He's a lot more fun. And he tells me to sit down on my computer and just type whatever comes to me. So I type, my religion, a manifesto. And I spend the next 3 nights awake almost all night, writing out 39 pages of philosophy, psychology, and religion, trying to solve the universe and reduce it to a single point. And when my parents find out about this and they drive up through the night for 5 hours and arrive at my bedside at 9 a.m. the next day and wake me up and take me to the psychiatrist, when I sit there with the psychiatrist and he tells me that I need to go to the hospital, I am shocked. The hospital? This is the best I've ever felt. Why would I go to the hospital? But I go, and in there, I become convinced that the doctors are trying to kill me with their medications, and the people come out of their rooms and tell me that I am Jesus, and I'm flattered and I am terrified because I will be crucified. So one day, well, 24 hours later, I wake up in a solitary room, a hard bed and a tiny window, tiny amount of light trickling through. And I ask myself, where am I? And what happened? And who am I? The doctors come in the next morning and say, I'm probably bipolar. I don't like that. That's not me. And what about Charlie? Charlie, who was so helpful before, is nowhere to be found. And so I try to make sense of it. Could this be me? I felt the best I ever had. I had the best ideas I ever had before. Could this be me? The connection's coming clear, clearly seeing that there's infinitely more. Could this be me? prisoner in my own mind, where someone else has the key. I'm not usually this way, so could this be me? And that's where I'll leave it for what happened.
Well, I wish I could sing. Well, really what happened to me is I was always the, highly sensitive, precocious kid. I'd have little freakouts. When I was in second grade, I created a show. I adapted a book. Adapted a book into a play and cast it. And when my fellow second graders wouldn't listen to directions, I kind of freaked out. And I was, banished to the hall kind of thing. So, I was just, highly emotional, just very sensitive. And, but I had a really good sense of humor. And I found that was a great way to connect with all kinds of people. I also use it to charm teachers, etc. I started having, right around like puberty, I started having panic attacks where something would trigger it, and then I plunge into a depression. And I started when I got past, like when I was 16 or 17, maybe 19, I went on birth control pills thinking that that could help regulate my insecurity and my anxiety. I was great until my second year of college. I came back from studying abroad, and I was in Russia and Israel and traveled all over Europe. I was, just flying high. And I came back, and that's when I suffered a bottom depression. And I remember I was scared, and I was also suicidal, or having some sort of suicidal ideation. And I knew I needed help. And I went to the head of the psych department at SUNY Plattsburgh, and he was like, there's nothing, I don't know how to help you, which was kind of weird. So I dropped out of school. I put on 40 pounds. My parents were freaked out. They sent me to a psychiatrist who, they didn't offer medication because this was back in the 80s. And I was in a hole for about 3 months, but I knew I didn't want to die. And I was ignoring, which I described the depression as a bully. And the bully was worse than I could. And I've experienced bullying in high school, but it was the worst thing to self-bully yourself and tell yourself that you really don't care, don't matter. So basically, I lived in, I would get better. And then I moved to Los Angeles to pursue a career. And that's when the anxiety kicked in, and I started overeating, and I packed on weight. And I was really trying to manage my anxiety. And that was the first time that I went on a antidepressant, which was Prozac. And that helped. But I was always just diagnosed with the depression. Cut to 10 years later, I meet a guy. I think we're going to get married. He winds up breaking up with me on my birthday, which triggered everything and the worst possible thoughts that I had of myself. And I plunged into yet another depression. And that's, I went back to a psychologist. I went to a psychiatrist. They put me on all kinds of, a lot of different antidepressants. And I started going to 12-step programs, which helped. And then finally, when I came back in 2011, I moved back to New York, and then I had to face the trauma from being emotionally and physically abused by my father, not sexually. And that's when I found an amazing psychiatrist who put me on a mood stabilizer, and I call it the carburetor of my brain. And then a little bit later, I got diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. Clearly, I got a lot on my mind right now, and I was put on Vyvanse for that. But that's pretty much, that was like my trajectory. It was experiencing depression, and then getting help and getting on medication, trying the right medications, and here I am today. Any questions?
Guys, feel free to unmute yourselves and jump in with questions at any point in time.
I'm just curious, you mentioned a medication you called the carburetor of your brain. What was that?
Because, being an actress and being a comic, I had to activate and access being vulnerable. But when I was on just the antidepressants, the first class Prozac and all that kind of stuff, it blunted my anxiety, but it didn't really help me personally, my depression. Whereas a mood stabilizer, and I'm not bipolar, I just have undiagnosed depressive disorder. I felt like, when you're going 50 and you hit a speed bump and it's like thud, thud, and it's not like the chassis will hit the bottom. That's how I felt the Lamotrin or the mood stabilizer works for me. It's like if I get anxiety, I feel it, but then it kind of blunts me going into a depression and going into the rabbit hole. So I feel my feelings, I deal with my feelings, and then I just carry on. You think I was trying to use a bunch of different metaphors, but I hope that explained, what I was, how it works for me.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
So if anybody has any other questions, feel free. If anybody wants to share any experiences they may have had that maybe resonate with what either Marla or Zach shared, you can also, we'd love to hear that as well.
Yeah, or even stories that of other people, friends, family, whatever. Anything is welcome.
Or we can move on to the next section, which is what helps. Zach, take it away.
Well, I'll take my cue from that, Marla. First of all, I love you basically comparing depression to bullying. I think that's brilliant, and thank you for that idea. I'm gonna put it in my show probably. So,
and I want to get some residuals.
yeah, I hear you. Not getting it, but I hear you. So,
or credit. I'll settle for credit because I use it in my show.
Okay, I'll put it. Yeah, you can use it. So yes, medicines definitely have been a big part of my. I guess some of us call it recovery. I'm not sure if I like that word because it kind of sounds like I'm recovering from being myself, but I don't know. I know it works for some people, but for me, I want to tell you the story here through part of my show. So after I left that hospital, 5 days later, I saw a new psychiatrist, and she wanted to adjust my meds. So she put me on a few, and then another few, and then another few, and then back to the old few. And now, 15 years later, after trying lithium, Lamictal, Klonopin, Ativan, Zyprexa, Risperidone, Diodon, Seroquel, Abilify, Latuda, Gabapentin, and Viagra, I thought, feels like guessing. So, does med school plus guessing equal educated guessing? Now, the doctor was very serious, but in my elevated state, this is what I heard. Lithium is a basic element. In fact, it's number 3. Some say we all should take it for its neurogenetivity. It also stabilizes mood. Don't have to take it with food. And the copay is so low, it's mostly free. And I said, what about side effects? Lithium may cause a tremor, thyroid problems, trouble staying awake. You could become toxic if you take too much at once, and then your whole body will shake. But you know it'll work? Nope. Brain magic. Don't know what these pills will do. Brain magic. Much less what they will do to you. True. Still, I recommend you spend your life popping a few. Magic beats a manic breakthrough. And so it went, and I tried many. And now, today, I guess I'm not supposed to say technically what I'm on now in this presentation, but I will say that there's a lot more to the equation. Of course, there's a support network, and biggest of all right now is my own participation in these thoughts. Right, depression has thoughts associated, mania has thoughts associated, and for me, the manic ones are particularly interesting. There's these very grand thoughts like my manifesto back in college, thoughts about being in a video game and about to win $1 million, and thoughts about being the Messiah, and thoughts about how reality works, and there's all sorts of stuff, and I would love to spend much more time talking about it. And I will say that I actually think a lot of that stuff is more real than what we think of as real. So that's a cool thing. But my psychiatrist very recently said, you know, Zach, it seems to me like you really enjoy engaging these thoughts. And I said, yes, I do. And he said, well, maybe if you didn't help them feel so welcome all the time, they would leave you alone and you wouldn't feel this way. And I've tried it, and actually it absolutely works. So I think there is a degree of control that I can have. The problem is that when it goes too far, then I can't control it so much anymore. So that's a lot about what helps. So let's go on to Marla.
All righty. What helps really for me is humor. And I found when I was in the pits of depression, having a place to go, namely the comic strip here in New York City, or having sets, it helped me compartmentalize and help develop a way of dealing with, depression and the bullying of the self-bullying. But then also being able to get up on stage and make fun and expose myself and be vulnerable and talk about, dealing with depression and anxiety and ADD. I mean, there's a lot of humor in it. And then when somebody would come up to me and say, wow, thank you so much, I don't feel so alone, it just made me then believe that this wasn't a detriment or a disease, but it helped me think of, it became like a superpower. Wow, this sets me apart. And this gives me like some power. And then when you think of all these great creative people that might suffer from depression and this and that, because, if you look at Hollywood and some of the most successful writers and actors and playwrights, etc., they've all had a little something. And recognizing that and having a therapist point that out to me was really helpful, because it's like, wow, they can still be successful and they're not looking at themselves with a disease. So that was very helpful, but also just therapy and finding the right therapist. When I first came back in 2011, I went to a psychopharm and I told them, I'm really suicidal, I'm terrified. And she just gave me like a Costco-sized bag of all kinds of drugs. And it was Wellbutrin and Xanax and gabapentin, which kind of kicked off an even, a bad suicidal thoughts because of the off-label is supposed to help PTSD, etc. But it was finding the best psychopharm who not only took my inventory and said, wow, so you were on Celexa, you were on Prozac, all of these drugs. That's when he put me on the mood stabilizer, which again had such a stigma, because I was like, wait a second, I'm not bipolar. And I would even have doctors say to me, oh, are you bipolar? When they take your inventory of medications and everything. But it was all about, therapy, talk therapy, and then getting into 12-step programs. I'm in AA right now because my mother got pancreatic cancer. My father passed away, dealing with aging parents. COVID hit. My husband had to have a big surgery. I had a hysterectomy because I had a cancer scare. So all of this, again, added to a depression. But being in 12-step programs, going to therapy, finally getting on the right medication, which is, a mood stabilizer and also Vyvanse. And also the signs of, oh, wow, okay, I'm overeating, I'm out of sync, I'm not exercising, I'm not going out for walks and seeing the sunshine. You know, just having kind of a plan of action that took a long time to develop was really, really helpful in not only recognizing that I was in a depression, but knowing I had a place to go, knowing that the medication worked. And I also check in with my psychopharm 4 times a year. And he's incredibly compassionate. And also continuing performing and doing stand-up and just laughing, because I find the minute you laugh, it flips a switch. And it, you know, they talk about how the serotonin kicks in. And that's really, you know, what helps me. And also talking about it, because it also lessens the shame and the stigma. And I think today, nowadays, with the political climate and all the shootings, and when you think about it, you have all these people with such unresolved anger and feelings. I mean, we're not given the playbook on how to be humans and deal with our feelings and have a place to go when we're upset, and you know, really just a way to express ourselves. So again, kudos for you guys for pursuing a career in this field. Any questions? Anybody want to share anything?
So there is a question, which I think is a really good question in the chat. So I'm going to start with that, and then, but again, we'd love for folks to add additional questions or share what they've found helpful in dealing with their own mental health stability and getting to dealing with difficult emotions. From the perspective of a patient, what makes a good psychiatrist?
You want me to jump in? Or is that for?
It's for you, I think for both of you. I think probably,
okay.
Yeah.
Listening, compassion. I have been to a bunch of, I think I've been to 2 psychopharms and about 4 therapists. And many therapists that I've been to, I found really narcissistic and would talk about themselves. And I had one who would just look in a mirror. So I think just being really compassionate, being really knowledgeable about the psychopharmacology, the psych meds, and also being able to then offer different types of therapy, you know, CBT, talk therapy. You know, I've done a bunch of different things. I've gone as, you know, as nutty as going to an angel healer and going to, you know, for guided meditation. But I just think being really compassionate and up on meds and different types of therapies is crucial, because I found that's what, you know, kept me alive.
And for me, I would say 3 things. One is treating me like a whole person and not just somebody who needs medication. Another is I certainly appreciate when psychiatrists take insurance. That definitely helps a lot. Although I know that opens a whole other set of issues on the doctor's end. And one thing I really liked is when doctors basically work with me to come up with my plan. So it's not like, here's what you're going to take. It's like, well, how's this working? You tried this one before. What do you think? And then my favorite doctors have been like that, for sure.
Oh, another thing, if somebody is in crisis, be available and be responsive. That's, I once had, when I was given gabapentin, and I was with my now husband, and it was just spinning me, being told to take Ambien when I felt suicidal and to calm down really didn't help matters. And I got rid of them real quick.
Other questions? That's a really good one. Thank you.
I had a question about kind of mindfulness techniques. As we as medical students go through kind of our own interview process for applying to residency programs to become residents ourselves, One of the questions we ask a lot on the interview trail is like, what kind of wellness kind of programs you have in place? And a lot of programs will answer with wellness kind of protocols. I think certain programs go into it more than others. I was kind of wondering from your perspective, how helpful is that for you? How integral has that been in your, I guess, protocol for treatment?
Huge. I was introduced to a mindfulness class. I also use apps. I find on YouTube, there's some really amazing, calming music. And then just looking at, they have beautiful sceneries from around the world. The Relax app and the Calm app really helps, because you know what, and also just focusing on your breath, because when I'm stressed, I had great advice. You hold your breath, you count to 10, blow it out slowly. You do it 4 times, and I just find that the anxiety will just dissipate. So mindfulness, exercise, not eating sugar, which is a big thing for me, and working out, and sunshine, vitamin D is critical, and laughing. Big
Absolutely
advocate for that.
agree. Absolutely agree.
Well, I'm about to go get some ice cream, so. Yeah, but I'm with you, Marla. I really need to eat less sugar.
Yeah, that's no bueno. I guess if no one else has any questions, we then move on to what's now, like what's happening now. Zach, when are you coming to Broadway?
Let's see. 2024? How's that?
Perfect.
Okay. What's now? What's next? So one thing is with Inside My Head, the musical, I'm bringing it to med schools, social work schools, colleges, to try and open up conversation on mental health. Really, my 3 goals are, number 1, to give an insider view of what happens inside the head of someone who has, in this case, bipolar. Number 2 is to show that it's maybe a little safer to talk about than we think, given all the societal signals we have. And number 3 is just to really make the point that truly no one is alone. So that's that thing. Also, new and exciting thing, I am looking to get a job in the pharmaceutical industry, thinking sales rep, probably, but open to ideas. If you guys know anything. Yeah, that's where I'll leave it. On to you, Marla.
Well, I host a podcast that's on a bit of a hiatus because I'm reformatting, and it's called Flip the Switch. And I talk to a lot of comedians about what they do to combat trauma, depression, bombing on stage, if that happens, dealing with difficult, audience members, or really just what they do to get out of, a bad mood. I do that. I'm also a speaker. I've developed programs for corporations about dismantling fear using humor. I'm a stand-up comic. I can't wait to start working again. I'm fully vaccinated. So if you have any shows, I'm available. I also want to write a book, and I can't wait to start traveling again, and just socializing and hugging all my friends. I can't wait for that. But just, continuing on a course of action, just being grateful for my life, and also, being an advocate for both NAMI and PanCan. And that's pretty much what's happening.
That's awesome. Thank you both. So now we can really open it up. Does anyone have any additional questions or comments that they want to share?
I do have a question. Thank you again so much for sharing your story. It's so great to hear the other side of the story. My question is, both of you talked a lot about different trials of different medications, therapists, therapy, and for a lot of people that can be very frustrating, and sometimes they even fall off the wagon because they lack the motivation to continue. So for both of you, what were some motivational techniques or people who really motivated you to continue the journey?
Well, hospitalizations are pretty motivating. Yeah.
I think, again, I keep circling back to finding a compassionate therapist, but what really helped me was being in, 12-step rooms, because when you think, if you are familiar with the 12 steps, so many therapists will borrow the actual text from the big book and use it and incorporate it into their therapy. And just talking to others and finding sympathetic ears was really, really helpful. And that kept me on my journey. But it was like this inner voice, like despite what I felt about myself, and having friends say, my God, you talk about yourself worse than you talking about anybody else, or you are your worst enemy. Just finding therapists, like-minded people, but and knowing I knew that, again, this was a bully that I could stand up to and I could overcome and harness, which has been, a life's work, but it just kept me going, even during the darkest times. And having that therapist say, just really tell that bully to F off, that was so critical. And, just getting on the right meds, that's, and having a course of action of taking care of yourself and being mindful. All of that worked, and it kept me going. And stand up and having shows, that was really huge. Sorry about that, Zach.
Oh, that's okay. With the mania, I'll add that, as I mentioned, it's really fun for me to get caught up in these thoughts. But then my girlfriend will basically feel alone because I'm not with her. I'm like physically with her, but I'm not there. So just being there for her can be a good motivation to ground myself a little bit and come back down.
Also, I think having family members, and that's what's so great about NAMI, is there is really breaking down the stigma. And I think talking, and we're changing the conversation. There's so much in the news about the importance of mental health and mental wellness, that it's finding a way, if you're dealing with patients, in my humble opinion, is really breaking down the stigma. And also, I mentioned earlier, seeing the plethora of so many successful writers and artists and actors and comedians that suffered, it made me feel as if I wasn't alone. And if they could accomplish X, Y, and Z, why couldn't I? So I think breaking and dismantling the stigma is critical, personally and on a global stage.
Zach, would you be willing to say a little more about how the hospitalizations were motivating? I think that might be helpful for these folks as future psychiatrists or potential future psychiatrists. I know you're not committed yet necessarily.
Yeah, I know that was kind of flippant, but I just mean, I've had 3 hospitalizations. 2 of them were pretty horrendous. One of them was totally fine. But just that experience of like being stuck there and being so scared and being, on a stretcher or whatever it is, it's like, I don't want to be back here, so I better take care of myself. If that makes sense. That's what I meant.
Thanks. So we have a couple more minutes. I think that was a great question about motivating forces. So would love to hear other questions that folks have.
I have a question for Marla. You said you got diagnosed with ADHD later on in life. Do you think maybe that your ADHD symptoms might have contributed to your anxiety as a child or as a teenager?
Probably, because yes, because I was told she thinks she's learning, but she's not. And I also worked in the news business, and I developed an ability. It's like land the plane, like I would hear it and then I could filter out the rest. So I kind of made that, I was able to harness that power. But yes, when you're a kid and you're told you're not paying attention, or I was getting thrown out of class and made to stand in the hall, I was, standing in the hallway because the teacher would be talking. I was like, this is boring. And I get up and I just start, chatting with my friends. Absolutely. And it wasn't until my husband kept on saying, finish your thought. And friends and family would say, gee, talking with Marla, you have to get into the pattern, like the syncopated rhythm of what she's talking about, and fill in the blanks or follow the bouncing ball. But then being with my mom and my sister, it sounds like I'm jumping all over the place. We all do the same thing. My mother was like, have you seen? And my sister's like, the car keys. Like, we're constantly filling in the blanks, but absolutely I'm sure it contributed to my anxiety. You get frustrated. Why aren't you understanding what I'm saying? Or why am I getting thrown out of class? And it almost destroyed my marriage until my husband was like, you better go see somebody. So.
Thank you for sharing.
Oh, yeah. That's why we're here.
There's another question from that was sent to me, particularly for Zach. What made your good experience at the hospital different from the other two, and what can we do to make people feel more comfortable during hospitalizations?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. It's a great question. So let's see. The second hospitalization was the most pleasant, and it felt calm. It felt like things weren't rushed. There were groups, or mostly not mandatory, but I felt like I had a lot of agency. And even with the medication plan in the hospital, I met with the doctor and my parents, and it felt like a group effort, and I felt cared for like a whole person. I think the first time, it's hard to say because some of it is a manifestation of my mind and the state I was in, but that first night was really terrifying. I felt like a lot of pressure to take these medications, and then once I got up 2 days later, I had a better experience. My parents were there too, so that helped. My third episode, which was pretty recent, about a year and a half ago now, is definitely the worst. And part of it is because I was on the wrong unit. They didn't have any beds, so they put me on a drug and alcohol unit, and clearly were not equipped to deal with a mental health issue. And to be honest, it wasn't just my issue. Like, there were a lot of problems with all the people there. But like really arbitrary rules, that's one of the things that really was the hardest. Like, for example, the rule is 8 o'clock is when medications start, and there's this little window, and the person opens, like the nurse opens it at 8 o'clock p.m. Stand in line, get your medication, and then you can go get your snack. And there was this woman there who may or may not have been pregnant. She kept saying she was pregnant. And she was standing in line, waiting. She's like, I'm hungry. Can't I just have my snack? I'm like, no, you can't have your snack, so you get your medication. And it's that kind of thing that's like, it feels like I mean, not that I've been in prison, but it feels like a prison, not a healthcare facility. And they didn't even have my meds right the first 2 nights. So, yeah, I think it's that keeping it a calm atmosphere, not telling us what to do so much as like letting us be and having it be an open dialogue.
I think that's Zach, you bring up such a good point that the rigidity in a hospital system is something we see a lot, and it's not exactly a one size fits all for all the individuals who are present. So I think that's definitely something that maybe we as future health providers can work on and try to fix.
You know,
Yeah, thank you.
just as an aside, you know, we've gone into some hospitals and you see, you know, I haven't been hospitalized, but it does seem sometimes prison-like. And I found, you know, when my dad was dying and they put him in hospice, and it was so beautiful and loving and kind. I just think it's tragic that we will treat the dying in such a beautiful, loving way, but the people that are suffering and in hospitals, it's cold and sterile, and it's stressful. And I just hope maybe, you know, the medical profession, and it's really probably all predicated by the insurance companies. It would be so lovely that, you know, to help somebody get over an episode or pre-diagnosis, to be in a setting that's a little more welcoming and warm and not so, you know, austere and terrifying. So change the world, people.
Definitely hear you there, Marla.
Thank you for that question. I think it's a really important one to address. Another question for both of you. How did you bring up your mental health situations with your partners, especially when initially dating, and how have different people reacted?
Wow, that's a great question. That's a great question. Because I felt so stigmatized by it, I really hid it. And I never really mentioned I was on medication until 2011. It was February. And I had just come back to New York, and my therapist, or the psychopharm, put me on gabapentin and then told me to take it and then take Ambien to sleep. And I was we were in Key West, and I felt the gabapentin not working, and it was getting me really amped up, and I was taking Ambien and I wasn't sleeping. So it's like she put me into this like psychosis, like, you know, this, I don't know what I would call it, but I wasn't sleeping and I was having suicidal ideation. And I called up the therapist and I'm bawling my eyes out. And my now husband came in and saw me on the floor crying. And I just said, I'm on medication. I'm feeling suicidal. I'm absolutely terrified. I said, please don't break up with me. And that's how I told him. And he said, are you kidding? You're everything I'm looking for. And I was like, a nutbag that's crying who feels suicidal? Like, what's wrong with you? But I mean, all kidding aside, telling somebody and just, you know, knowing internally that this man had a lot of character, and spilling my secret and having him react the way he did, that's, you know, I was pretty much down on my knees, and that's how I told him. And I was really thrilled that, and thankful that that was his reaction.
Yeah. So when I first was diagnosed in college, I was really ashamed and afraid. And I think part of that was my parents trying to change the diagnosis. In fact, the doctors did change it from bipolar to mood disorder, not otherwise specified. And it wasn't until my second episode 9 years later that I finally accepted the bipolar diagnosis. So it was really hard. And then when I started doing my show, I started talking about it more. And so I had a day job. These people knew about the show. I'd invited them to the show, but I still hadn't told them that I was bipolar. And it was like time was just closing in between these two forces. And then like a few weeks before the show, I got laid off. So there's the universe telling me to speed things up. But then on the contrary, I then interviewed for a different job at a different company, and the HR guy was excited about the show. So he said, send me the info, and I was about to send him this email, and then I realized that, I think I disappeared. And then I realized as I was about to send this email that it says in the email that I'm bipolar, and I'd never like sent that to an employer anywhere. And I hesitated. I was like, should I erase that part? I don't know. And then I decided, you know what, like, this is way bigger than me. Like, I need to speak out on behalf of everyone. And if they don't take me because of this, I don't want to work there anyway. So that's, you just got to do it, really. I mean, it sounds flippant, but that's really what it is.
These are great questions. I think we have time maybe for one more. I know I think the session goes until 3:30, right?
Right.
Yeah, so we can, these have been really great questions if we want to fit one more in. And I know some, oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead, please.
Oh, sorry, are you sure? Okay. Okay, if nobody else has a question, I was just curious, if we happen to know someone who is kind of is going through the prodromal state of their mental health condition, and they're having a hard time coming to terms with it, as a friend or a family member, or I guess I should rephrase my question. In your time, I guess, of your first crisis or in your time of need in the past, like, what is something that you would have really wanted to hear from a loved one, from a friend or a family member, that really would have helped bring you out of that state or help you kind of come to terms with your condition? If there's kind of anything that you would have liked to hear or anything that you would have liked someone to have done at that time, I'm really curious.
Going to somebody and being just absolutely hysterical and having them, hug me and just say, it's just, let's calm down, like, just, start, just, take, what happened to me was, I was just in such a state, and it was one of my girlfriends, and she just hugged me and she goes, don't worry, I'm not going to leave you. It's going to be okay. This will pass. You'll get some help, but just let's start breathing, again, inhale and then hold your breath and breathe out a couple of times. Just calm down. It's we'll figure this out, and we'll get you some help. And that's what really helped me. And then, finding a therapist who was willing to see me pretty quickly.
Thank you, Marla.
I would say, well, especially for mania, when a person is able to engage with and hear some of my ideas rather than just shutting me down or dismissing it, that helps a lot, to just feel that connection. You actually care about me and where I am right now. And then after that, being able to say, hey, like, can you come down a little bit? So also having a little bit of I don't know if it's a code, but I've been using like a mountain elevation way of describing, like, okay, if Everest is 29,000 feet and sea level 0, Everest being like the worst mania ever, 0 being no mania, where are you on the mountain? And I'll be able to say, okay, I'm 4,000 or 10,000 feet or whatever. And that kind of helps give a little more a sense for where I am and how the person can help me by knowing that.
Thank you, Zach. That's really illuminating. I think that's a great technique.
Thanks.
But can I just add one more thing? I know is because I was in therapy and because I could recognize, like a panic attack coming on. And if I was with somebody, I could say, okay, I'm getting stressed out. This is what's going on. It will pass. And being able to, like, again, open and vulnerable and not feel ashamed that, oh my God, this is like, I just got triggered. This is what's happening. And don't freak out.
Thank you, Marla. That's great advice. I think I'll definitely tuck that away for a time when I need it.
Well, if I'm looking for a therapist, I'll come find you.
You're more than welcome. It'll be like 5 years from now, but I'm starting
Okay.
residency this summer, so slowly
Again,
but surely.
I think it's great that you're pursuing a career and can help change the world. I think it's wonderful.
Thank you, Marla.
So I think that's we're a little past time, so I want to let you all go. But I guess Zach and Marla, do you have any last thoughts to share with the group?
I've said it. I think it's great that you're pursuing a career in the mental health field. So hats off to you guys.
Yeah, we need you. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for doing what you're doing.
And thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, Clara, Marla, Zach. Thank you so much. It was so wonderful to have the gift of your time today. I know it's a Saturday and the weather's great outside, but you chose to spend it with us. So we really appreciate it. This was so incredibly enriching.
Thank you all, and thank you all for your questions. They're really great, and thank you for having us.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.
All right, so the time is now 3:33 p.m. Our next session is at 3:45, so I'll give you guys a few minutes to take a break, and we'll be back at 3:45 p.m. EST. All right, thank you. By the way, feel free to stay in the Zoom meeting. I noticed that people were kind of closing the meeting and then coming back. We only have one link for the meeting, so you guys can stay here and then mute yourselves and just turn off your cameras. Thank you.